Thanks, everyone. Our next speaker is joining us from the City of Davis, and it is Greg Mahoney, and he is the Assistant Community Development Director. And he's going to talk about our next tool, which is Resale of Property Ordinance. Thanks, Greg.
Morning. Let me see how to get to my presentation. Thank you. I'm not going to talk about, or I'm not here to talk about a REACH code, but I did want to mention that City of Davis is moving forward with a REACH code that will incentivize all electric buildings. And we've had REACH codes in place since 2008. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Busseri and Frontier Energy for all the help that they provided and support they provided for us, not just for this REACH code effort, but for previous efforts as well. So a little bit about City of Davis. Population getting close to 70,000, probably is about 70,000 by now. And there are just under 25,000 households. As you know, it's a college town, so a little bit different demographic than a lot of cities. Roughly a little over 16,000 single families, duplexes, and triplexes, and those are the types of dwellings that are captured by our resale ordinance. We call it the City of Davis resale program. And approximately 57% of the housing units in Davis are rental properties, so we have a lot of rental units and all the challenges that go along with that. And 55% of Davis residents live in rental housing, and most of those are. So more than 43% of the housing units in Davis are in multi-unit structures, so apartment complexes. And the rate of home ownership in Davis is a little bit lower than in other parts of the country. We're at just under 44%, where the average, national average is closer to 70%. So a little bit of history on the program. In 1972, 2 residents perished in a fire that was in an unpermitted and converted garage. And so being a college town, the council determined that that's not something that we want to see happen in the City of Davis. So in 1976, they created the resale program by ordinance. And a really quick description of what it is now. I wasn't around in 1976. But basically, when you sell your property, a house, either a single-family dwelling or a duplex or triplex, you have to come into the building department and pay us $426. And we go out and inspect your home to determine if, as best we can, if any work has been done without permit. And then at that time, we require that you obtain permits for any work that may have been done without permit. And so when every house is sold in Davis, the new buyer gets a clean slate. All the work that's been done on that house has been permitted, inspected, and finalized. And so there have been a few revisions to the ordinance over the years. In 1980, there was a retrofit component included in the ordinance, which was basically just to insulate the attic up to R19, and we looked for smoke alarms. And we don't enforce that part of it anymore. We do look at smoke alarms, and in every building permit, we verify that all the smoke alarms are functional. But pretty much everyone has insulated their attics to at least R19, which is what the requirement was. I know in more temperate regions like the Bay Area, you could probably get away without insulating your attic, but in Central Valley, where you see temperatures over 100 degrees often in the summertime, everyone recognizes the benefit of insulating their attic. So in 1994, we reformatted the ordinance to include informational sections, which have proved to be helpful for new buyers. And in 2013, we redrafted the ordinance, brought it up to date. There were some components of it that were sometimes problematic, and so we worked closely with the real estate community, and it was, it took a little while, but we got to a point where we had an ordinance that everyone could agree on and that was helpful. Some of the benefits of the program is that it helps to maintain the quality of housing stock, and it really does. When a house like I said, it is sold, it has to be brought into compliance. And this is demonstrated by the property values in some ways anyway, or in part by the property values in Davis. We're really, if you bought a house or looked at a house in West Sacramento that's only 10 miles away, same house in Davis is about twice as much. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is the quality of housing stock. Our fire chief or the previous fire chief, this is anecdotal, or at least I received it anecdotally, so I don't have stats to back this up, but he says that there are fewer structure fires per capita in Davis, and he attributes that to our resale program. It really, we kind of have this culture in Davis that doing work without permit is really discouraged, because the residents or property owners know that if they don't get a permit when they do the work, when they sell the house, they're going to have to get a permit, and we charge penalty fees, double permit fees for people who do work without permit. And there's often issues associated with doing work without going through the plan review and inspection process. So illegal construction is discouraged, and property owners acknowledge that this is something that happens in Davis, and it's really, you can't really get away from it. One of the, I think, what we're probably most interested in this gathering is to ensure code compliance, and specifically with the energy code. And there's a lot of issues right now that are going on around across the state with Senate Bill 1414 and the Energy Commission's plan to address unpermitted HVAC changeouts. And this program, although that's not what it was designed for, it actually does address that problem. So again, discourages permit avoidance, and the program doesn't pay for itself. We have to supplement, or we have to take a little bit of money out of general fund to pay for the cost. But one of the things that we do, we are able to contribute towards the cost of administering the program, those permit fees of about $70,000, or the penalty fees of about $70,000 per year help offset the cost. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I was just providing some statistics. So we do, over the last, I don't know, 10 or so years, we do get into about 558 houses per year. And since this program was initiated, we've probably been in just about every single house in Davis. Many of them we've been multiple times. And as we do go into the homes and we do the inspections, we create an inventory. So the next time we do a resale inspection, we know what was there the last time, and it's fairly easy for the inspectors to identify work that wasn't done before and they haven't obtained a permit for since the last resale inspection. So it kind of forces us to keep really good records. And I threw this in here because I've actually done this presentation for the Energy Commission, again, trying to deal with Senate Bill 1414. And so there was interest in how many HVAC permits we get per year. And so relatively small community, and we average about 500 HVAC changeouts per year, permitted changeouts. And that's compared to our total permits, which are about just under 4,000 per year. So, and someone sells their home, the requirement is that all residential properties are subject to the resale program. There are different requirements for the single-family, duplex, and triplex in comparison to multifamily. So this resale ordinance, the inspection is applicable to the single-family, duplex, and triplex. We have a different self-certification process for the larger multifamily homes. And really, they don't change hands very often, but we do have a process to address those. We do have some exceptions in the ordinance, so interfamily transfers, divorce or passing on the property to family members, they're not required to go through the resale process. One of the challenges that we see is when there's a foreclosure or something like that, and the bank now owns the house. They go and sell it at an auction, and typically we're not involved at that point. So that's one of the ways that they can kind of get around the ordinance or the requirements of the ordinance. But staff does review county records every month, so we can see which houses are transferred. But so sometimes we have to go after the new comply with the resale ordinance. All right, so a resale application is required to be submitted at least 15 days before change in ownership. This is one of the greatest challenges for us because the realtors don't always comply with this requirement. And sometimes, the escrows are more faster than others. Sometimes, they want a 2-week escrow if it's all cash, things like that. So this resale inspection sometimes gets in the way of the transfer of property and the transaction, and that's where we typically, I guess, cross paths with the realtors, and so the more experienced realtors and the ones who want to do well by their clients, they'll actually go and get, as soon as they find out that they're going to list the house, they say, let's go get our resale inspection, take care of all the items on it right up front, and then we'll list the house. Because if you sign, and you list the house, and from that point on, at some point you get the resale inspection, you may have offers, you may have accepted offers. And then we do the resale inspection, and all these items come up. Some of them are just informational. They're not necessarily items that need to be fixed. It can actually affect the transaction where now they're going to renegotiate the price. And so it's really much more beneficial for homeowners and realtors to take care of everything and list their house with a clean resale or a validated resale report. So when an applicant comes in, a realtor, and they application, we give them a day that we're going to be out there, a day and time that we're going to do that resale inspection at that time. Resale inspectors work, they do inspections Monday through Thursday, and then Friday they make sure they've got all their reports done and within that 5 days. And so, and that's $426 for that inspection. The report's divided into 3 parts. Part A are items that have been done without permit and need to be corrected. They need to get a permit. They need to get inspections. Section B are items that need to be remedied, but the city is not going to verify that. They have to sign that they have done that. And Section C are just items that are. So once the report is validated, that report is good for 18 months. If they don't sell the house within 18 months, then they're going to have to process again. And we used to have exemption, if you sold your house within 5 years and you say that you haven't done anything, then we give them an exemption, but that was really problematic. Seller or buyer has to take responsibility and have the report validated within 90 days. The report is validated when all the items are corrected. And then they're supposed to turn over a copy of that. So challenges really requires additional amount of diligence by both the counter staff and the field staff, because we go out and we take in a set of plans and say replace lights in the garage or replace receptacles or garage, and then the resale inspector goes out and sees that there are some receptacles that appear to be code compliant, and then there's a few that are not code compliant at all. We don't know whether those were part of that permit or not, and so we actually require they submit plans, fairly detailed plans showing exactly how many lights, where they're going, how many receptacles, where they're going, the configuration of cabinets for a kitchen remodel, and it's also when we go back and do the resale inspection after, say, a permit was issued, a year ago, the inspector did the inspection, he may have missed some things, and the resale inspector identifies them. It's kind of embarrassing for the city, that the inspector didn't catch it. So these are things that are brought up to us. One of the biggest issues that we've had, especially recently, is appropriate staffing for the workload. So we don't know, I don't know if you remember this slide, but we had a couple of years where we had, at the beginning of the, say 10 years ago, we were doing about 300 inspections a year, and then we jumped up to 600 and 700. So there were times where our inspection lead times were like 8 weeks out, which drives a realtor's crazy impact on their transaction like that. So that's been one of the greatest challenges is appropriate staffing levels because it fluctuates. Another one is last minute applications with close of escrow pending when the realtors say, I need this done right now. Owners claiming that work was done by the previous owner, even though you can look at the appliances and see that they were manufactured between the time the time of the last resale inspection and this one. And one of the most significant challenges is work that was done without permit that is not correct, that they have to redo, and it's very expensive. We do have sometimes issues with out-of-town agents who are not familiar with the program and cost recovery for the. Just a little tidbit. The California Energy Commission performed a couple of studies, or had them performed, and one said that only 8% of the changeouts obtained permits. The other one said 10%. And so we took a look back over the last 5 years and found that only 5% of the houses that we inspected did not get HVAC or permits when they did their changeouts. So it's not exactly apples for apples, but we're somewhere in the 95% compliance rate. So it is an effective program as far as code compliance and permit avoidance. Any questions?
Thanks, Greg. And we have time for maybe 2 questions. So, right here.
Hi, Ariel again. I apologize if you earlier in the presentation had touched on multifamily self-certification and the cost of that. What does the multifamily self-certification process look like?
It's just a form that they have to complete that says that they have not done any work without permit since the last time the property was transferred. And just a real quick comment on that. To me, I'm still amazed at how much attention that these apartment building owners pay to getting permits. They get permits for everything just because they know that it's part of the Davis culture.
And Administrator, I'm curious what you do in the way of public outreach and education so that people are aware of the permit triggers. So, for example, the HVAC permit, I mean, we know that this is an enormous problem and you're solving it through the resale program, but clearly there's some mechanism getting the word out other than, I assume, other than word of mouth of people who've been burned by having to pay double permit fees. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the ordinance has been in place since 1976. So generally people know that it's there. We have one contractor in town who does probably about 70% of the HVAC changeouts, and he doesn't do work without permit. And then we have, others, unless it's an out-of-town contractor, which, we experience from time to time. Most of the contractors who do work in Davis understand that they need.
Last question.
Hi, Greg. Kellen Damon, County of Marin. I had a question about the cost of the program. So you mentioned it doesn't really pay for itself, but it also contributes to higher property values. So doesn't that tax base kind of help support it on the back end?
Yeah, and I didn't take that into consideration when we're looking at the cost. So that is definitely a benefit.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Greg.